Hi, I'm Tim, and this is Drumsound 360, or how to get a great drum sound using average tools. I made these videos for those of you who want to record great drums but don't have a big studio with tons of equipment and an engineer and all the other personnel with all the knowledge on hand. This is more about what difference proper tuning makes and how you can tweak the signals after you recorded them. This can be very interesting for musicians who want to record drums for their band and don't know quite how, but this can be also very interesting for engineers who are faced with the situation that the drummer they are just recording is a really good player but hasn't spent a second of thought on how to tune his drums, because that happens a lot. In this first video, I'm going to guide you step by step through the process of tuning all your drums, and in the second video I'm going to show you what I would do with the recorded signals. Okay, this video is titled How to Get a Great Drum Sound Using Average Tools. Now by average I don't mean especially cheap, but affordable and good ones. For drums that simply means avoid poplar, avoid basswood shells, and try to get something made of a decent wood like maple, beech, birch, mahogany, walnut and so on. So this golden beauty here is a Sonorphonic from the early 80s. It's made of beechwood and I can only recommend these sets because they sound great, they are indestructible, and they are really underrated. Why that is, I don't know, but I got the whole set for 350 bucks. Wow! The snare drum is a Sonor Light. It's not quite as underrated, but still cheap and cool. The rest of my average recording setup consists of an Audix D6 inside the bass drum, a Rode NT1000 in front of the Resonant Head, then there is an i5 on the top side of the snare, another i5 on the bottom side of the snare, two SM58 on the toms, a 57 on the hi-hat, and a Neumann U87 as mono overhead because we only have 8 channels. I amplify all the signals with a mic preamp that a friend of mine built for me for very little money, and finally I convert all the signals with my U80 Apollo. So all in all, pretty ordinary, but not too shabby at the same time. Today I'm looking for a dry, low, indie pop sound, so I'm using thick heads, namely Remo Emperor coated on the toms and the snare drum, clear ambassadors on the bottom sides. I have a Power Stroke 4 coated as Better Head on the bass drum and a coated ambassador as Resonant Head on the bass drum. Before you put on new heads or readjust the old ones, you should do a quick check on the bearing edges, like this. And if the bearing edge feels like this, or if you have splinters in your finger, you should get the bearing edges fixed. If not, you're good to go. Okay, bass drum is the easiest, so let's start with that. You can use used heads like I do, but they shouldn't be too beat up. The procedure is pretty much the same with every head on every drum. First you finger tighten all the screws, then you press with one hand into the middle of the head until you see wrinkles all around, and then you start turning the screws until the wrinkles go away. So maybe don't do it all at once, do it in 2 or 3 rounds. The goal here is to get equal tension to every screw and every lug, and that the hoop sits straight on the drum. Okay, what I like to do now is to use a little force and push the head into the hoop. Like this. Looks a little brutal, but what it does is now the head sits where it's supposed to sit and the drum stays in tune instantly. For dampening, I like to use a feather pillow. This one, because my bass drum is only 14 inches deep, touches both heads. That really is a lot of dampening, but for my dry sound of today, that's really what's needed. The same thing I just showed you, I did to both heads of this bass drum, and it sounds like this. Wow! That's pretty good, but not quite what I want. For the dry sound, I like to bring the tuning of both heads as far down as possible. Starting with the resonant head, I loosen the screws while I tap around on the outer area of the head to check the pitch. By the way, it should go down when I'm loosening the screws. Now I'm not looking for a specific note here, I'm just checking that the head resonates freely, and if it doesn't anymore, if it starts sounding choked, I'm too far down. That's good. Finally, what I like to do is to loosen the upper 2 or maybe the upper 4 screws a little more to add some dirt to the sound, like this. That's nice. With the better head, it's even easier. Here I'm just looking for a good playing feeling and the right amount of kick. The rule is, the higher I tune the head, the less kick I get and the more tone I have. And the lower I tune the head, the more kick I get and the softer the playing feeling gets. I'm going to show you. A little lower. Even more. A little more. And that's it. The snare drum is next. I check the heads, I check the bearing edges. The next thing to check on the snare drum is the snare wires. If they are not parallel like these, they would cause buzzing, and that's very annoying, so I would replace them then. Okay, same thing. The screws are touching the hoop, finger tight. You're pressing down the head in the middle until you see wrinkles, and start tuning the head up until the wrinkles go away. Now, a special thing on the bottom side of the snare drum is the snare bed. That's these two little depressions here and there. I like the wrinkles to be gone there as well, so the head needs a little extra push. That means I tighten the screws, the 4 screws next to the snare wires a little or a lot more, depending on how deep the snare bed is cut. Okay, and now I tune the whole thing really up, really tight, because only that way the snare sounds responsive and controlled at the same time. A little more. It feels really dangerous, but it's necessary. That's good. I flipped it over. The top head starts as usual. Okay, wrinkles are gone. And now I take a closer look by tapping on the head like I did on the bass drum Resonant Head. Only this time I take the drum key and do the tapping. So what I'm looking for here is roughly the same note on every point I tap. That's good. So let's tune the whole thing up. And it sounds like this. Pretty good, but neither dry nor low. Here comes the secret to a dry snare sound. Simply turn out one screw completely, and if that's not enough, you take a second one and turn it out as well. And if that's not enough, you take the one on the other side and turn it out as well. I'll try. Another screw. By the way, the wrinkles are back. Aha, pretty close. Maybe a little extra dampening. And for that you can use half a moon gel and put it inside of the wrinkly area here, or you just use a little piece of duct tape like this. There it is. The toms are no witchcraft either. So same thing, wrinkles are gone, and I start checking the pitch. Okay, one thing to remember about the toms is that the bottom head is to a great extent responsible for the pitch of the tom. So a good rule of thumb is the note you're hearing when you're tapping on the head is around an octave above the note the tom will give you when you hit it. So, can you give me a note? Thank you. That's close enough. Now for my dry sound, muffling is very important. And what I like to do is to throw in a handful of cotton wool into the tom, and that quiets down the resonant heads. Now let's tune the top head of the 16-inch tom. I did the same thing I showed you before. Wrinkles are gone. I checked the pitch. The top head of the toms is responsible for the character of the sound. So the higher you tune it, the cleaner the sound gets. And if you're looking for some dirty boing, then you go low. I like it a little dirty, so I tune it down. That's good, but it could be a little drier. Let's take this piece of toilet paper and a little piece of duct tape. Let's just stick it here. And another one here. Let's see how it sounds. Nice. I like the high tom to be close to the low tom, pitch-wise. So I tuned the Resonant Head pretty low. Now let's bring the top hat down. And the tom is done. That's the dry sound. Thanks for watching. And if you're interested in how I process the signals after this recording, check out Drumsound 360 Part 2. See you!